Well, with that out of the way, I would like to introduce our first speaker. So if you could all give a big round of applause for Hans.
Hi everyone, and welcome. My name is Hans Bol. I'll do some more introductions later on, but welcome here at Vandebron. As you might have noticed, we recently moved in this building about 2 to 3 months ago. So some things are still under constructions. So yeah, bear with us. We're actually super happy with our new home here. Who's Vandebron? Who are we? And what are we striving for? We are a mission-driven green tech organization. And what does that mean? So this is our mission: 100% renewable energy as soon as possible. That's why it's also an abbreviation, because it shows how short we want to be. So that means we're also an impatient bunch of people who are continuously looking for opportunities to move faster and to speed up the energy transition as soon as possible. We therefore trying to provide a platform for customers and producers to bring those together, to connect those within the Dutch energy market in order to provide them with the best solutions when it comes to renewable energy. Sietse, anything to add?
Oh, no, I perfectly explained.
Okay, thanks. But then, who am I? Well, as you can see, I'm a father of 2, with my oldest on the left, it's Noé, and on the right side, it's Ezra. This basically shows my situation currently. So there's laundry in the living room because we have a construction going on at the moment. I'm giving a bottle every evening, so to say, and that makes actually that I'm less able to actually go cycling, which I love to do, especially long distances above 100 kilometers and so on. I'm 2 meters tall, as you can see, and I love dancing, Latin dance in specifically. You might not be able to see it for you if you're 2 meters tall, but trust me. Well, I do it in the wild, not specifically the steps as you should. I also love cookies, so whenever you would like to treat me, bring me some cookies. And I'm an agilist. At least that's what I'm trying to be every day, in order to adapt to new circumstances every day, not only in my work but also at home, as you can imagine, with 2 young children. That requires some adaptation once in a while. And I wanted to take you back onto where my journey started as an agilist. It was already quite a while ago, and when I was in a small, dark, meeting room where I was part of a small company called Rambla with a few colleagues of mine, and there was a consultant, Rose was her name, and she was explaining to me the ways of working that Agile could provide on Kanban, DevOps, Scrum, all kinds of practices she trying to teach us. And at that moment in time, a lot of things that I had learned and experienced in the past, for me, clicked. It was like, wow, this is actually something that resonates a lot with me. The whole point, the reasoning behind it is actually, this is what I need to do. And from that point on, I actually I decided to become an Agile coach. And I joined a company, it's called Humanity, and I had the privilege to work with Arie van Bennekom. And Arie van Bennekom is one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto, who taught me a lot about, what actually the intention was of the whole Agile movement, so to say. That it's, that they have this nice manifesto, and that it should help us to adapt to new circumstances as quickly as possible. And along my journey in that sense, I noticed something, particular. So I started with the 4 values to really embrace that and to really think of, okay, what does that mean and how can I actually apply that into the organizations that I'm hired to make a change. But along the way, I started to actually, well, realize that those 4 values, super nice, super useful, and super handy. But it's actually, the magic is in the first sentence. So we are uncovering better ways of developing software. Well, and nowadays I think it's more applicable to say working solutions or valuable solutions. By doing it and helping others do it. And this is for me, is the essence of, let's call it the Agile mindset. It's about, hey, we continuously uncover, reveal new things. And yeah, those 4 values are important, but the first sentence, the whole mindset of actually getting into, well, to be agile in that sense is for me in the first one. And, but not only, so then, because when I was educated in that sense, I came across quite some organizations where I noticed that Scrum was, let's call it implemented, used in a lot of different ways. And along the way, I started to notice that within the community and within organizations, Scrum and Agile were the same. So a lot of the times when you talk to people, Scrum and Agile are sort of, well, they're mixed up, and well, that's an interesting thing because it's just one of the methodologies that let's call it the Agile umbrella provides. I mean, if you're looking at the authors of the Agile Manifesto, they were all representing different types of methodologies that were used. DSDM, XP, but also Scrum were all there. So it's a lot more than it. And that's interesting because why are we actually embracing Scrum for that sense? And by actually a lot of organizations embraced it and used it, which is still a good thing, right? It's not necessarily compared to what they were used to do. You also start to see different, what to call it, downsides of it. Because what you see there is that with applying Scrum, also, well, the role of Scrum Master was inherited in a lot of organizations, which I still believe is a good thing. Nevertheless, what you see is that Scrum Masters have been, well, maybe misusing the Scrum Guide in that sense. Because what you see is, if you're looking at the Scrum Guide here, what it basically says, the Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. They do this by helping everybody understand Scrum theory and practice, both within the Scrum team and the organization. I copy-pasted it yesterday, so it's accurate. But what you see, at least what I've seen in quite some companies, is that therefore Scrum Masters were very much focused on doing Scrum, optimizing Scrum. So, and holding the Scrum Guide as an argument for, well, getting certain things changed, or as sort of the holy grail for how you can, well, be agile in that sense. And that's interesting, because what you currently see in a lot of, well, at least what I've seen in the community, is that people are struggling with that. So that is, okay, the Scrum is not necessarily the only thing we need to do in order to stay, well, to become agile in that sense. We need so much more. For instance, user stories, well, that's something that has been also quite embraced by a lot of companies. But the struggle actually starts now when you see that there are a lot of people are starting to, what's the word for it? They realize that we need much more. So I see Scrum evangelists, for example, to promote Kanban metrics, which is interesting because that's not something that is actually promoted by Scrum. And so I noticed there is a lot of, well, sort of, there's a point here in time that I feel there is a change needed. But maybe it's to summarize. So the intent here is we want, well, the agile way of working is there to stay relevant for our customers, to optimizing customer experience with speedy delivery of valuable solutions. That's what we're striving for with each other. And what is actually interesting is that the whole what is Agile debate is actually, moving us away from what we're actually trying to achieve. Because we all have different meanings, different perspectives, different interpretations of what it actually is, but it's, causing us a lot of time, which we could say it's waste. Agile is not Scrum, I repeat, or Scrum is not Agile. Scrum Masters are sometimes also misunderstood or misused within organizations. So I've also seen that Scrum Masters are more of project managers. For instance, at Out, where they were really put in as a project manager, driving the initiative that a manager wanted to adhere, and therefore, we're pushing on it. Where that's conflicting to the way at least how I look at it. And also because I see Scrum Masters therefore focus basically on the wrong things. And what I mentioned, this community is struggling with the title too. Which made me think, okay, it might be time for a change. And when I started thinking about it, I realized one of the experiences I had in the past was coming back to me quite often. And I used to be, not a professional, but a sailor, a regatta sailor. This is a J22, and I was actually participating in the World Championship, which was an open class, nothing very fancy. So it's not, don't expect too much from me. We actually did quite good though, by the way, but that's another story. And what I did there, what I experienced there is, who of you is a sailor? Okay, not so many. When you're sailing regattas, that means you follow a certain course. You go from against the wind until with the wind, so to say. And that means this is downwind. That means you're going with the wind. And you have this big spinnaker, that's the biggie. Means a lot of speed. But at some point, at the end of the course, you need to get it down, make a turn, and then you need to go against the wind again. But you have to imagine, because I was the guy who was holding the spinnaker with 30 boats running down on one turning point, and super hectic, and I was like, we were like pumping speed, and water was all around, just shouting everybody, and but at that moment I was fully in control. We knew what we had to do. We knew at one point, okay, someone was actually saying drop. We dropped the spinnaker, we pulled it in, and we moved up, and then we go up against the wind, and I think we were fourth of the 40 boats or something. And that moment kept coming back to me, because that was the moment I was in flow. And that's why I thought, I need to start calling it Flow Master. Because that, for me, is the essence of what we're trying to achieve. And so I try to formulate a nice way of, an alternative that I provide here. So for me, the Flow Master is therefore accountable for establishing a sustainable flow of valuable solutions from the value stream, whatever that is in your organization, with whatever means necessary. So whatever practice or whatever tools or whatever intervention you feel or deem necessary in order to get that flow going. They do this by helping everyone embracing the Agile mindset, the concept of flow, and the practices/frameworks to get there, both within the team and the organization. And I put my name underneath it. Yeah, let this sink in for a bit so I can take a sip. Yeah, sorry, I'm super thirsty. So how does this help? Or how does this help us? What it actually does is by changing the name, it shifts the focus of the people who are performing the role. So instead of focusing on Scrum, we're focusing on flow. And therefore, it also brings a more holistic view. So it's not only focused on the term, well, doing the events or putting the roles in place or using the artifacts. No, it's about a broader view on how can I improve flow with whatever means necessary, so to say. That also triggers different behaviors and ideas from the role people who've performed the role, but also from the people around them, because they understand, hey, we're doing this in order to get into that state of flow. It also triggers the people who are performing the role to go beyond their team. And that's actually where most of the time the magic happens, because, well, the interactions that teams have with their users, with their customers, or with, with people outside of their team, that's where a lot of distractions, for instance, come from, or lack of direction, lack of purpose, and that's where we, also where I would like to see a flow master, to support or intervene if that's necessary, because that's what might be necessary. It also helps in better positioning the people, because I've also noticed that sometimes the role of Scrum Master is actually, let's say, misunderstood. And what does a Scrum Master do, and what's the added value of that role in that sense? And by, let's call it renaming it, but also by, putting an emphasis on improving flow, that gives a much better understanding in an organization of what he or she could do, or what he's initiating there. Although I must be honest, within Vandebron, some people are still struggling with, okay, what does that mean for me? Because they're used to the Scrum Master interpretation. So I have some work to do there. And it helps us to stay, in that sense, agnostic. Use whatever we need in order to get to that state of flow. And that's all right, that's all cool, but what does that actually mean, that state of flow? And I think a lot of people are quite familiar with the left one, so a constant stream of valuable solutions. But I chose deliberately today to zoom in a little bit on flow, the mental state, which is, a little bit more on that later on. What is flow? There's actually, I have his book with me. I have difficulties with pronouncing his name. It's Polish scientific researcher, Mihaly. I'm not even going to try, sorry. So if anyone has a sort of Polish.
If you think of chick, send me hi, then you say chick send me hi.
Thank you. So, yeah. And he did some scientific research. Actually, he started with research about how do I improve, or how do people get into a state of happiness. But what he actually found out is that the state of happiness actually is closely related to the state of flow. Flow is, in that sense, is a state, and this is his definition, in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience is so enjoyable that people will continually do it, even at a great cost, for the sheer sake of doing it. Self-consciousness is lost, one surrenders completely to the moment, and time means nothing. Pretty cool, eh? And you'll probably all have an experience where you have, been in this state of flow. And what I found was interesting, is what he also mentioned, is that flow is not only essential to, because he also translated this to the workspace environment, that flow is not only essential to a productive employee, but is imperative for a contented one as well. Which I interpreted that, okay, this is for us as employees in a workspace, something that we want to strive for, that we help or support each other and, employees in that sense, to get into that state of flow. And What he found is that actually the experience of that state of flow is, most of the time, at least at the beginning, is an individual experience. Nevertheless, in his research, what he showed was that actually by being in that state of flow together is more enjoyable, which for me connects, one-on-one with teams. So how do you get teams into that state of flow that, because that brings them more joy and therefore more, they're more engaged actually in that sense. So there are 8 characteristics of flow. And when I discovered this a little bit later on, for me it also was another, let's call it an argument of why we should call it Flow Master. To walk you through it. So 8 characteristics of flow: complete concentration on the task, clarity of goals and reward in mind, and immediate feedback. Transformation of time, so speeding up or slowing down. The experience is intrinsically rewarding, effortless and ease. There is a balance between challenge and skills. Actions and awareness are merged, losing self-consciousness, rumination. And there is a feeling of control over the task. This one. And what is interesting here is if you're looking at, let's call it the agile way of working, a lot of things overlap. Because on the first one, the complete concentration of task, focus, doing one thing at the same time in order to speed up. Clarity on goals and reward in mind and immediate feedback. We want people to have purposes, understanding why they're doing the things they're doing. And immediate feedback, so we want to close that feedback loop as quickly as possible so we learn quicker. Well, it's there. And the third one for me was also there's a balance between challenge and skills. Because if the challenge is too big, that means, sorry? It's exactly. And there's also a distinction between those 3 and the rest of it. These 3, those are highlighted in green, are actually sort of prerequisites in order to get into that state of flow. The others are more the experience in themselves. But then obviously the question arises, how to get there? And this is for those, from team topologies, we want to create focus and be very conscious on the cognitive load of our people and our teams. Because that, depending on where you put your attention and your cognitive load, it creates focus and therefore we are able to solve complex solutions in that sense better. I won't dive into detail too much because I think I also have, shortage of time. And I wanted to show you this one. Because this is the one that, this is a challenge skill matrix, also designed by Mihaly. Thank you. And here you basically, see what happens if the challenge is either low, medium, or high versus your skill level. And the skill level needs to be high and the challenge level also in that sense high, because then you get into that state of flow. All the other situations, so to say, prevent us from being in that high-performing state or in that state of flow. So that's something to be conscious of for us in order to, support teams, but also support individuals, or be conscious about when you look at teams. So if you see that teams are bored, for instance, okay, that means we might need to give them a bigger challenge. And so you can work with this view in order to help them to go through and to get into that state of flow. So, to summarize, I don't know how I am in time, but I think it's all right. So for me, if flow is the intention that we're trying to achieve, so not only on a constant stream of valuable solutions, but also in our state of mind, then why not call it Flow Master instead of Scrum Master? As it, for me, it triggers the right, intentions, the right interactions, and the right ideas. And I'm super curious about your thoughts on it. Curious to hear if you have any questions around it. But this was my story for now.